Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Influential Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Duncan, and as a mom and lawyer, I want to be a cheerleader for moms who don't want to give up their own goals and dreams. Around here, we celebrate moms who are making a difference and talk about ways to juggle work, motherhood, goals, faith, self-care, and more. I'm so glad you're here. The only filters we use around here are coffee filters, so pour yourself a cup and enjoy the show. On today's episode of Influential Motherhood, I am here with the lovely Dawn Barton, who I have kind of gotten to know her story from Instagram, and I'm excited to talk about a little bit more about what I see through her wonderful stories that if you're not following Dawn, you definitely should, and we'll link to her below. But I feel like I just kind of know your journey a little bit, and I can't wait to hear more about it, Dawn, and some really big, exciting news that you have coming up. So, Dawn, thank you for being here on the podcast.
I'm so excited to be on. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I love how Instagram really does. I had somebody ask the other day, how do you know that person? I'm like, through Instagram.
I know. And, 15 years ago, that would have seemed just completely weird. And now it's completely normal. So
it's the match.com for friendships today.
It really is. It really is. And I am here for it. I love it.
I love it too.
I love it. So, Dawn, you are a mom, but you are a grandmother and just had a new grandbaby like days ago, right?
Did.
So,
he's 4 days old right now.
Gosh.
Yeah, he's 4 days old. He's really cute. And I'm going to say this so humbly, I don't look like I should have grandchildren. I say this with
seriously
pride.
do not. You do not. And I think that's maybe in part because of what you know from your former work. And so you've got some good secrets tucked away, but you also have taken very good care of yourself, and you look wonderful. So when you said you were having a grandbaby, I was like, she's got to be kidding. This is not real.
Number four,
which is amazing to me.
And I didn't mean that as a, hey, huge ego boost, but I mean, like I would have never thought in this season of my life at 49 years old, I would have 4 grandchildren.
You are rocking it.
It's
you
awesome.
are rocking it. So, Dawn, I didn't get too much into an introduction about why you're here on Influential Motherhood and what we're going to talk about. But Dawn spent years as one of the top leaders in Mary Kay, which is fascinating to me because I would think that is very hard to do. And so you were a mom, I would assume, during at least part of that. And then you took several leaps of faith, and now you are releasing a book, which is just incredible. So I can't wait to hear about all of this and just your journey through being a mom and a grandmother and following your dreams, which is what this is all about, is moms who are able to not only live through the chaos of motherhood, but also kind of lean into what they're passionate about. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we hit record, you mentioned that you kind of stared out in, you said computer software sales. Is that right?
Yeah. Actually, what I didn't tell you is I went to school because I wanted to be an attorney.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Wow. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up. And then I just fell into the world of computer software sales, and stayed in that for many, many years. And then I moved and took a giant leap of faith, actually just to help my daughter at the time. And I joined a direct sales company, Mary Kay, which had you asked me the week before, I would have guaranteed you never, ever, ever in a million years was I going to join direct sales, much less Mary Kay, which I thought was like for old ladies at the time. There was just no way.
So what happened in that week? So you one day, were saying no way, never. And then you were signed up. So how did that happen?
We do amazing things for our kids.
Yes.
My daughter was 18. My firstborn was 18, and she was wanting to do stuff with it. And truly it was just sign me up to help her out. Okay. And I fell in love with the culture. I was in a season of my life. My other child was 18 months old. So the girls were 17 years apart.
Wow. Yeah.
And I like to say that's just because I've been highly desirable for a really long time. But I was Ella was 18 months old, and I was in a season of being at home with her. And I know that a lot of us just hope and pray to have that where we get to stay home. But I was dying to use I just felt like I wasn't using my mind at the capacity that I wanted to. And I just needed that adult human interaction. And then I joined and I kind of filled that cup a little bit and fell in love with the culture and the women. And it was a little bit of a love affair, to be honest with you. A very unexpected one.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were really missing what you had gotten out of, because it's sales still. And so you had you were missing that piece. Did you have moments when you started out where you were like, you know what, this isn't going to work. I'm out. And you just decided to stay in, or was it just like a big snowball of momentum for you?
Oh no, I was deciding about every other day I was out. Anything that you do that plays into your ego and getting turned down and your feelings hurt, and that whether that be in corporate life or whether that be in your own business, direct sales or not, that's hard. It's hard to press into the things that are usually the things that will have the biggest results for us, or the things that can maybe crush our spirit a little. And so it's hard, but in order to have that big success, you have to keep that push. And I'm naturally competitive, I hope in a healthy way, but, and strategic. And I just kind of thrived in that environment. And I really liked it. I loved the recognition and the wins. And I think I needed it in that season of my life. Yeah.
So you were kind of in it for, obviously for, the makeup, I'm sure, but it sounds like for the relationships and kind of those levels of achievement that you were gaining.
Okay, confession.
Yes.
I hate, if you see me on Instagram, as you often do, my husband says, you're either Hollywood or homeless looking. There's not a lot in the middle. And there's not. I'm not a big makeup person. And I definitely didn't like doing it on other people. Isn't that funny?
That is funny.
I know.
So what was your secret sauce? How did you?
Well, a big part of any kind of direct sales industry, and the biggest piece of the money channel, is really through the recruiting. And I was a good recruiter. I loved the people, and I loved loving on the people and building her up. And I never got tired of seeing when you work, I had hundreds of women on my team, that when you work with them, how few times women are told, God, you're really good, or you're amazing, or gosh, you're beautiful. Just the most simplistic things to see a woman's face go, really? It just, that's what did it for me, 100%.
Yeah. So when you would get rejected, that's something I think that if you're in sales, you kind of you kind of know how to navigate that. But I would assume this was with people that you knew too, like on a personal level. It's not like, somebody walks in your office and says, here's a file for a new client we have, go, make the sale. This is people that you actually knew who might have been rejecting you. How did you navigate through that and kind of keep your head up and your chin up through that?
Well, I think if a person goes into a business and thinks that there's, I'm going to talk to 3 people and my whole life is based on these 3 people, then statistically, they're probably going to get their soul crushed. But if you go into it knowing from a strategic standpoint that there's, 1 in 10 are going to say yes, and numbers, and you're simply working a numerical thing versus an emotional, which is so hard to do. I know I'm talking a big game because it does hurt your feelings no matter what.
Yeah.
And even at the level I grew to be at in Mary Kay, it's still... I'd be a big fat liar if I said it didn't hurt my feelings. But I think the difference in the people at the top versus the people beginning is that those that have been in longer, or those that succeed more, they just know how to pivot a little bit faster.
Mm-hmm. That's so important. And it's interesting, as you're thinking about this, I'm thinking about, just like this, for me, this podcast, like this little side, hobby that I have at this point, and the number of emails I send that either I get a no or I don't get a response. There's a lot of those. It's more than just, it's not like everybody I email is like, yes, I'll come be on the show. And so I just have to cast a really wide net, knowing that there's going to be a certain number of them that are either a no or that I just don't hear a response. And then a portion of the ones I reach out to will want to be the right. I think that they'll identify themselves as the right fit.
But all that we see is the amazing women that have said yes to you, right? So,
right.
We don't know that.
You think like,
she's doing so well.
Yeah, it's just, everybody's saying yes. It's like, that's definitely not the case. There are definitely people saying no. And you just have to like you said, I mean, you can't let your pride, it's easy to say, but you can't let your pride get involved because it's like, this is not a personal, no,
so
I don't
easy to
like
say.
you. I'm not, I'm not coming on your show or whatever. It's just part of life, I think.
It is, but it does hurt our feelings a little bit. And I think if we can acknowledge that as women and then we just say, yes, it did. But I also know the numbers behind something like this. And I know that you have to go through this uncomfortable season, then it becomes a little more okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you had an 18-year-old and an 18-month-old.
I did.
And you were launching this business, this Mary Kay business. Talk to us about that. And what was that like? Kind of launching a Mary Kay, launching a child, launching a baby. That's a lot of launching all at once.
Yeah. And I'm married to an airline pilot who is gone 3 or 4 days a week.
Oh, wow.
So there's a single mom in it in the middle of that. But I'm a big believer that we define what the mommy's job is to our children. So when we, like for me, I was going and doing some parties in the evenings and things like that. And rather than, I always pulled my kids into it so that this was the goal and this is what we're going to do. And I attached a goal for them to it. And then I worked towards that. And then when I would come home, we would talk about how much closer we got to that. So for Ella, during different things, sometimes it was a trip that we were working towards as a family, and sometimes it was a toy. So it stopped that. Please don't go, mommy, please don't go, because it brought it to a win. But I always had support in place, and whether I didn't count on that my husband was only the one who could be here. I just went on with kind of making sure things were covered for me. And if he happened to be home at the time, then it was great. I didn't need to pay a sitter. But I think sometimes women are a little resistant to pay for that help. And in order to catapult the level of our businesses, we have to.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So you reached the top, and remind me the specifics. You were in the top.
I was number 7 in the nation. I was the number 7 sales director.
Oh my goodness.
I have about 600,000 women in Mary Kay. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
And we had made a giant leap we had done 383,000 in sales one year and went to over 1 million the next year with a really small team. And it was a record-breaking year. It was huge. And in the middle of this monumental year of massive momentum, I lost my sister to breast cancer, and it sort of it was smack dab in the middle, and it really changed things. It changed things in perspective of hitting goals. And when you have every excuse in the world to stop doing something, do you do it? Because I had a huge excuse, and so to speak, and I chose and, asked my parents, making sure they supported it. And we turned that goal into a year. My sister's name was Kim, and we made it #KimsMillion for everything we did. So it became about her and for her rather than the excuse not to because of her. Yeah. So, and then a few months later I left. So.
When your sister passed away, did that feel like kind of the beginning of the end with Mary Kay, in terms of like maybe my path is going to, kind of verge off here in a different direction?
Not at all. Honestly, I never dreamed in a million years. I thought I was in for life, to be honest with you. And we finished our year. The Mary Kay year runs through June 30th, and we finished the year. And then in November, I had a dream. I sound like all kinds of crazy when I tell the story. I fully acknowledge that.
No, I love it. I love it.
I had a dream, and God just said, you're going to write a book. And here's the chapters, write it down. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm not a writer. I don't even journal, and I never read. I'm not your girl. No way, no how. And he won. And I felt like it wasn't just you're going to write a book, but I felt him saying, take a giant leap of faith here. Like, leave what you know because I have something better for you, bigger for you. Not saying that my life was not wonderful, because it was, but I just felt him saying, take this leap of faith into this next, piece of things. And I did. I left last February. Well, wait. The dream happened in November. I left in February.
November of 20.
Oh gosh, it's going to be 2 years.
Yeah,
it would have been 2017. I resigned in 2018. Yeah, February. It took me a few months to really come to terms with it. And then I wrote the book, and everything I just felt like he really went before me with things like an agent and a publisher and all the things. And it's just been an amazing journey.
Oh my goodness. Okay, wait. So I want to back up. So you wake up from this dream.
Yeah.
And like, who do you call? Or do you tell your husband, like, guess what I just had a dream about?
Well, I'm actually just envisioning telling my husband, and he would go, okay. That'd be my husband. But just coincidentally, I don't know if you know Laura Casey. She is the author of the book.
Yep.
So Laura Casey, and she does the Power Sheets. She was my fitness trainer 13 years ago. Like, hilariously, lived here by me, and we were friends. And we didn't talk very much, but the first person that was on my heart was to talk to Laura. And I was a little embarrassed to say, hey, God told me to write a book, and, what do I do? And she kind of just gave me some next. I literally Googled, how do you write a book? So I just
love that.
Yeah, I Googled, how do you write a book? And I called Laura, and she gave me kind of some tools and some steps, and it was really wonderful to have. And I just did kind of just dumping. There was no beautiful story of how it all came out. It was a girl with a Word doc just mentally dumping it all. But Laura Casey was kind of huge for me right off the bat.
Okay. And so she didn't say, okay, Dawn, you're crazy, go back to bed. It was like, oh, yes, like follow that. And she kind of, because of course that's kind of her nature and what she, kind of what she does.
It is. And it was a sweet, I also knew not to scare the bejeebies out of somebody I hadn't talked to for months on end by saying, there's a line where you sound crazy. I know that. And I just didn't want to do that. So I didn't bombard her in any way. And I used the tools that she sent. And then I just really cherished and respected the relationship so that, you don't want to overuse that kind of thing either. Yeah. But she was a pivotal relationship for me in this too. And through Laura, I met Emily Lay, who is also an author, and she does the Simplified Planner and things like that. And Emily lives near me now, and we have the same agents and the same publishers and all of the same publishers. So it's been a gift. Yeah.
That is wonderful. Yeah. So you wrote your book, and so this has all happened really fast, which from what I understand, writing a book is typically like, a 2 or 3 year process, and your book is coming out, remind us when?
It comes out in February. So it will be 2 years from when I left Mary Kay that the book will actually be on the bookshelves. But I've learned so much about writing a book. And there are people who, a great example is Emily Lay. She wrote the book in January, and the book will be on the shelves in November. So she's an established author, those kind of things. And people can write books in a really short amount of time. It's the publishing process that takes a really long time. Yeah. But if you're someone who wants to self-publish, then you can get a book out really fast.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the reaction of your folks at Mary Kay when you said, I'm out, I'm headed to write a book? Like, tell me about what that was like.
Well, I think they all thought I was just cuckoo. I mean, they just like, you have really lost your mind. Well, I don't know if Mary Kay is a Christian company. So I think there was a lot of women who were respected and loved the following of a God calling. And there were others who just didn't understand it and thought there was some crazy, that there had to be something that went wrong, and there just wasn't. It was simply the following of a God calling. And it was a very hard decision to make because my best friends were in the company. I loved it. I loved the culture. I loved my life with them. And it was scary to jump out into kind of a one-woman show, and the lady I was working for myself was sort of a pain in the rear. So, and I wasn't terribly focused, and I was a little all over the place. And this is going to sound not great, but I don't love writing.
Oh, okay.
I know. I just don't. And I'm so passionate about authenticity and doing things. Do I do it well? Yes. Do I enjoy there are people who have such a love for just the written word, and their cup is filled by writing the words. And I think because I'm actually really ADD, that it's so hard to get in that mode of focus, that it's a little challenging for me. But I do like the challenge, and I like the result of it. But is it something that it's a go-to to fill my cup? No.
Yeah.
But ice cream is.
Yeah. Hey, preach. Give me some brownies and ice cream, and I'm there. I am there.
For sure.
That's funny. So you went from a very social kind of, and by social, I don't mean like, I just mean, you're evidently a people person, as am I. And to me, writing seems very isolated in a way and lonely. Yeah. Yes. I don't mean to like totally bring it down as a thing to do, but how did you kind of get yourself through that process? And like, what was your process? Did you write at home? Did you go to Starbucks? Kind of, how did you get this book knocked out in a way that kind of kept the creative juices flowing?
Well, I'm always in awe of people when they say I go work at Starbucks. I'm like, I know if your Starbucks is different than mine, but there are people coming in and out of mine all the time.
It makes for amazing people watching.
I know. I've never done anything worth any while at Starbucks other than drink coffee. But no, I wrote at home, sitting on the sofa or sitting in my bed. I had an office at the time, but I just creatively, I didn't do well there. Mm-hmm. And I hired an editor to work with me from the beginning. Now, usually in this book writing process, you have an editor at the very end. But in this case, I just hired a woman who had been an editor for a lot of years, and she worked with me through the book, which was great because she taught me to be a better writer and to, I didn't even know what an editor did, honestly, but it was things like, okay, Dawn, you're writing in present tense and then going into past tense. You're not, keeping the same tense, or you talk about one idea here and you don't follow it through here. Things that I'm like, you don't know. Yes, I do. Darn it. It was frustrating in the beginning to get, edited pages back. And, but she definitely Sherry made me a much better writer for it. That is unusual in this process. You don't usually work with an editor all the way through.
Okay. So how did it land that way for you to have the editor all the way through?
Oh gosh, it was, when I tell you, crazy God stories on every single turn of this journey. Mm-hmm. It was crazy God story.
Oh, I love that. Love that.
It was a friend of mine. About it. Yeah. Her name's Sherry, and I was friends with her on Facebook. So, therefore we were really close friends.
Yes. Yeah. Therefore it is legitimate.
Yes, it is so real. We were Facebook friends for many, many, many years. And I think it's because we actually don't remember. I think she came to a Mary Kay party of mine many years ago. Oh. And, a friend of mine said, hey, do you know Sherry? She's an editor. And I had just started. I'm like, I don't need an editor. I'm like one chapter in. I totally know what I'm doing. Yeah. I got this. I don't need no stinking editor. And then the next day somebody said, do you know Sherry? She's an editor. She's does big magazines. She does books. I'm like, I don't need this stinking Sherry. Like, no, I totally got this. And then the third day I get a message from Sherry through Facebook and just said, heard you're writing a book. And I was like, okay, God, I got this one. I hear you. Mm-hmm. I got it. And so we met at Panera, and I gave her my first chapter, and she marked it all up. And I was like, she's a hack. She doesn't know what the heck she's doing. And then the next day I looked at it and thought, oh, this is really good. But I mean it from my heart that I did write that book with Sherry, because it's a book about joy. And the reason that's a little unusual is because I am somebody in my life I have lost a child to pneumonia. I have been raped. I have gone through stage 3 triple negative breast cancer. Mm-hmm. My husband struggled with alcoholism and is 4 years sober now. I lost my sister to breast cancer. My mom had a brain aneurysm that burst, and many other things. So it's just this, joy seems like a very odd subject to write about, but in all of those crazy, heartbreaking things, there were these hilarious pee your pants moments throughout it all. And so it's a book of collections of stories that talk about joy in the middle of these really hard things. And so to write about something that was so, some of those things were really painful. And I remember somebody saying, was it therapeutic? And I thought, no, not even. It's horrible. Yeah. But to have her go through it with me, just from an editorial process, but also just as a friend, when I would call and I just say, I can't write today. I just can't do it. I can't do anymore. And she'd say, okay, stop. When you're ready, we'll go on the next one. So I had a partner in it, and she was a huge gift.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, what a way to get, especially writing about such a what had previously been kind of, I would assume, a private part of your life, and to be spilling it all out onto these pages, knowing that somebody's going to be reading these, and to kind of have to relive, I guess, emotionally a lot of those hard times, but then also the funny times, because that's what you were writing about. Did you know when you kind of went into this that was going to be what the book was about, or did it kind of develop that as you went along?
Well, just to continue the I sound completely crazy story.
No, you don't. You don't. This is how the Lord works.
It is. Is that night in the dream, he said, you're going to write a book, but then he said, these are the chapters, write them down. And I just argued that I'm too tired. No, I don't want to wake up. And he said, wake up, write them down. And I wrote down 6. And when I woke up in the morning, I expected to just see these long, eloquent, beautiful, words from God. And it was just these just one word per chapter, but I knew exactly what each one meant.
Oh, wow.
And that was sort of the foundation for the rest of it.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
Is there an example, without spoiling the whole book, is there an example of a pee your pants moment that you can share with us?
Well, one of the stories
one
of the stories that's in there is about when, so I had breast cancer, and I went through 6 months of chemotherapy, and then I had to have a mastectomy, and I was very large breasted. So I went to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, and I was mentally prepared. I was going to go in there, and they were going to take both breasts, and then I was going to get new implants that were going to stay exactly in place forever and ever. It's going to be this beautiful, amazing story that came out of an ugly mastectomy. But the reality of what happened is I went in, and they would only take my right breast, because they said the chances of complications in taking both were higher than the chances of me getting cancer in the other breast. And they were absolutely right, by the way, with the move was right. But at the time, it was devastating. I just couldn't imagine having one really large breast and not another one, because I'd had so much chemotherapy and was about to have so much radiation that I was not allowed to have reconstructive surgery for a year to 2 years after. So I was going to live life with the one breast. So she wrote me this prescription for a prosthetic breast. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing that you do. I was thinking, I'll put a sock in there, or like a blanket. I don't know. I don't know. So I get a prosthetic breast, and I use this very formal way of figuring out a name. I put a Facebook poll out there, and we decided to name the prosthetic breast Lucky. So Lucky was this hot, heavy, they're very weighted. You don't even think of that part, but this hot, heavy, weighted thing. And every single year, one of my best friends, Casey, would come to town with her husband and her kids for Blue Angel weekend. So we live in Pensacola Beach, Florida, and the Blue Angels, the Navy's elite flying team, are from here. And every summer after 4th of July, they do several shows in a row through a week, and it's called Blue Angel Week. It's a huge, amazing, gorgeous, wonderful week. And the Hembrys also always come. And that year we rented this beautiful, huge sailboat. I think it was like a 40-foot sailboat, huge. And we had the kids, we were all swimming and frolicking, and I had just happened to find a swimsuit that Lucky fit into. So it didn't even look like I looked normal, and everything looked good. And we lined the kids up on the edge of the boat, and we looked at them and we said, they were all scared to jump off the side. And we were like, we have got this. Wait till you see what Mommy and Casey can do. We're going to jump off the side of the boat and show you guys. And so we get ready, and we're going to do these great things. And her husband, John, is filming us, and I jump in the water. And as soon as I hit the water, I can feel Lucky come out. Oh, and all I can think is, I don't know if insurance will cover another one. These are so expensive. Is Lucky sinking to the bottom? How deep are we? Am I going to be able to find Lucky?
Oh my
All
goodness.
of these things. And I come out of the water, and I look at John, and I say, I lost my boob. And the children are all staring at me. And then about 15 feet away, like a torpedo coming out of the water, comes Lucky. And the kids to this day, I'm sure, are devastated beyond all that you can imagine, needing therapy as they go on through life.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Like, Miss Dawn's boob. So those are the kind of stories that are in the book, that those are funny stories in the midst of, this yuck stuff of having to get Lucky.
Oh man.
Which I still have Lucky.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Lucky was rescued, and okay, good.
Lucky floats. We did
Lucky
not know that.
Lucky
Now we
floats.
know. Yeah, he does.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. Well, thank you for sharing that. And that just makes me even more excited to get the book. Hey friends, popping into this episode to remind you to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. You can also sign up for my monthly newsletter for secret posts and bonus content at www.melissaduncan.com/join. Now let's get back to the show. Can you remind us what the book is called?
It's called Laughing Through the Ugly Cry and Finding Unstoppable Joy.
I love that. I love that. And, you know, those ugly cries, man, when you can find a way to laugh in them, it's just like, it's such a strange feeling, but it's like a good feeling, you know?
It is.
Like
you ever been to a funeral where you're sitting with family and you guys are all cracking up? Or the most inappropriate times sitting, you know, in hospitals and stuff when you just have those kind of those moments of finding joy. And I just believe those are the sprinkles from God of just remember me, you know, that there's still joy in the midst of heartache, but you really do, you have to look for them. And I think if you live a life of looking for them, life is a whole lot better.
Oh man, no kidding. And just, I mean, thank you for, you know, listening to God and to jumping up and writing those little chapters down in the middle of the night, because this is just, you know, what an amazing perspective that's going to be important for, I think, a lot of women who might be going through, you know, hard times, and to be able to keep that perspective is just wonderful.
Well, and I do want to say, I didn't you know, see angels on high and follow him beautifully and without question. It was so hard. And I questioned just about every step of it. I did keep going forward and knowing, but I don't want anyone to think that this was easy, but I'm so glad I did. And I love that he really, truly, when you follow him, he goes before you, and he went before me. And, you know, I had heard over and over how difficult it was going to be to get an agent, and then how difficult it was going to be to get into the publishing houses. And for me, I sent my book proposal to one person. She said, "Oh my gosh," I was just asking if it would look right. She said, "Can I send this to my agent?" And I said, "Yes." And within hours, I had a call from a top literary agency out of New York, and they signed me. And I said, I believed in my heart that the publisher was supposed to be Thomas Nelson, HarperCollins, and HarperCollins signed me. So it's crazy God stories at every turn.
Oh, I love it. So real quickly before we wrap up, what is can you give us an example of a moment of resistance that you had, or, you know, major doubt where you just said like, I don't know about this?
Oh, I like it's every day. So, so it is. I think it's more like, can you give us an example of where you completely believed?
Well, you finished the book, so there's that.
So it has.
You signed the contract. So
I signed the contracts, and we just started the editing process, and there's so much to it. But I will tell you a story that I love to share that isn't really the book, but it was about the $1 Million Year, that in regards to parenting and doubting what I was doing.
Oh, I love that. That's
and it was in the last quarter. You know, we were in the last 90 days of finishing this huge goal, and the Mary Kay world was watching, mostly because I talked so much about it and my mouth was so big about it, because I'm a big believer in putting things out there rather than holding them back, because more people can pray for you when you're authentic and honest and you put it out there.
Yep.
And we were 90 days out, maybe 45 days out. And my daughter at the time, Ella was 9 or 10, and she had drawn a picture of myself, my husband, and herself. And from me was a little bubble coming out, and it said, "Hi, my name is Dawn, and I work all the time." And it was like a gut punch. And all I thought in that moment is, what have I done? How, I'm going to call the company and resign. This is not worth it. What have I done? I am the worst mother. Every thought of stopping and questioning myself as a human, as a mom, as a wife, as a person. It was awful. But in that moment, I happened to have the wherewithal to say to her, "Does that bother you that mommy's working a lot?" And she whipped around. She had a ponytail in, and she goes, "No, I want to do the million."
Oh.
So had I not asked that follow-up question, I never would in a million years have thought that's how she felt. But because she had watched me, and because we had talked about she had been a part of this goal. When we had new team members, I'm like, we got a new girl. She was brought into it, that this was an exciting race. It was, a big goal. It was in honor of something that we got to stand on the stage and talk about God, and we got to talk about her aunt and when we finished Million and all of those kinds of things, that she was fully invested in it. And I never would have dreamed it. And all I could think is, how many times as moms do we not ask the follow-up question?
Yeah.
And we just run with that guilt. And I don't think there's anything more powerful than the guilt, right? If we could harness that and we could win wars with it, right?
Seriously.
Mommy guilt is like,
it is
bad.
Real. It is powerful.
So bad.
Oh, man.
But I think we underestimate our kids sometimes, and it's just worth showing them, to do the big things. And I'm not somebody who does the cooking or the cookies or, I just I'm not a particularly domestic person. And one person was telling me a story, and she said, what if God needs you to be full all out what he's calling you to be because of what he's calling your child to be? And maybe he's calling your child to do something so big, and they won't have the vision of doing that big thing unless they watch you do it. So when you don't live out loud in those callings, then it also hurts our children.
Oh, I love that. Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so easy to just naturally think the worst and to think, well, yeah, my kid hates me because I work. And it's like, you could be making such a positive impact on your child. And so don't make those assumptions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I would hurt my child more if I was staying home full time.
Yeah, I say that all the time. I am not kidding you. People are like, how do your boys like? So I'm like, listen, they are thriving in life because they are in daycare and go to school because
better people, right?
I mean, even after a weekend, our whole family is like, all right, we're ready to go back to,
It's
like,
true.
It's Monday, yay, and they love it. And I'm like you, I don't cook. I'm not all that like domestic, in terms of coming up with, little crafts and activities. And I am a better parent when I'm home because I have gone out and kind of done my, my thing. And I think my kids feed off of that. And one question we ask at dinner every night is, how were you a leader today? Or how did you help someone today? And as a family, we go around the table, and I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, but they can at least come up with something, like tonight, my 3-year-old said he helped the teacher finish a puzzle. Aww. But it's those things that, I could easily get sucked into I was gone from them all day. Right. And, like I wasn't there to be doing the puzzle with them. And it's like, no, they see me they hear me telling stories of how I've helped people, and now I'm getting them to think about, their little world in the same way. And so, what a great question for us to think about asking our kids in terms of like, well, do you think I work too much? Does that bother you?
Yeah.
Like, how does that land on you? Because you just can't make the assumption that it's bad.
Absolutely. And my firstborn, who is now 29, almost 30, with the 4 children, is married, and they live about an hour and a half away, but she would love more kids, and she homeschools. And I just look at her and go, like, how are you loin of my loin? Like, how did I make you? But she loves it and she thrives in it. And I think that is her calling, right? I think that when we figure out what just fills our cups and gives us joy, that's the direction to go.
Yes. I completely agree.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like, are you just in book mode, or do you have something else that you're thinking like, okay, this is going to be next after the book, or is this like, let's just get this book out and into people's hands?
So my dream is to continue to write. I have like the next 3 books. I know what they're going to be after this. My dream is to continue to write, and then to speak in a way that relates to what I'm writing about. But to primarily be a writer. And I do love to speak, and I do enjoy speaking. So I'll kick that up a little bit going forward. But I want to be a writer. I don't want to be famous or any of that. I'd like to make really good money.
Yeah.
But I just want the message out. I'm just passionate about women, and that we get to choose the joy, and then we get to choose to do the things that give us joy. And when we, have that combination, that life's pretty stinking good.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, you are a woman on a mission with this, and you can just tell that you are following God's calling, and so I'm just thrilled for you, and can't wait to get my hands on the book in February.
And
so I'm going to link in the show notes to your website and your Instagram. But can you tell us out loud, in case people are driving down the road listening, your website and your Instagram and any other places you want people to find you?
DawnBarton.com is the website. And then Instagram is Dawn R. Barton, like Dawn really Barton, Dawn R. Barton. And it's the same with Facebook.com/Dawn R. Barton. Same there too.
Okay. Well, we will be watching and eagerly awaiting the books with an S on the end, plural books. So do you have dates for the other books that are coming?
No.
Okay.
I don't. And it'll be, they kind of just based on the sales of it, it'll be 12 to 18 months after the first one. And, so it'll be, it's still, we have plenty to do. And there'll be pre-sales of the book, and I'll be doing a big book tour. But it should be everywhere. It should be like in the Targets and the Walmarts and the Costco's, and it'll be all over.
Yeah. I love it. Cool. Well, that is amazing. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we'll just follow along and cheer you on, and can't wait to read those stories. And thank you again, Dawn, for sharing your story and encouraging us as moms today.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks, Dawn. I'm so thankful for the moms who share their stories on here on the show and in our fun Instagram community. I'd love for you to connect with me online at Influential Motherhood on Instagram and Facebook to continue the conversation, or just say hello. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating and a written review in the Apple Podcast app. It's how you can help get the show in front of moms looking for episodes just like this one. I hope you'll find a way to influence your work or community for good this week. Don't forget, you can listen to other episodes or learn more about the show at www.influentialmotherhood.com. See you next week.